Hi everyone, and welcome back to U University. I'm Dr. Kelly. Well, now that it's August, it's time to start thinking about school again. Our fall semester starts in a week, which is hard to believe, and that's something that I've been working on a lot lately. Today I was in a meeting all day long, and much of the rest of this week we have meetings on campus. I'm happy to say that I have all my syllabi and handouts ready to go. At this point, I just need to get my classes set up on the university's web course management system. Two of my fall classes are face-to-face, but I still use the online course management system for posting handouts, and the students submit their papers electronically there. One of my courses is fully online, so that one has video lectures and the whole course is set up there. It's always bittersweet for summer break to come to an end. Of course, it's nice having the summer off and being able to focus on other things besides grading papers and going to meetings. But I've always been the kind of person who kind of looks forward to the first day of school. And when I was a student, I always thought it was exciting to meet my teachers and start off fresh. And I still feel that way. It's fun to meet my students and see how each class dynamic is going to emerge. One of the things that I've always loved about the start of the school year is doing a little shopping for some new school clothes and especially school supplies. Can we just pause here and talk about school supplies? Do you guys love the office supply stores as much as I do? I feel like I could never have enough colored pens, and I always have a stockpile of way more notebooks than I could ever use. Well, I thought maybe some of you are like me, and so I thought I would share with you a few of my favorite school supplies. So first of all, my favorite pens are these Papermate InkJoy gel pens. I have them all in different colors as well as plain black and blue. You can get them in a fine tip of a 0.5 millimeter or a medium tip of 0.7 millimeter, and I like both. Most of mine I think are a 0.7 medium tip. I love them because they are completely smooth when you write with them. The ink really shows up. It's very opaque, and they have a texturized rubbery cover that is really comfortable to grip. They also have a clear plastic window that tells you how much ink is left. And they do last a long time. I've probably had these for about a year now. They are retractable, which I like because then you don't have to worry about losing the cap or fiddling with the cap when you take it on and off the pen. So again, these are the Papermate InkJoy gel pens. My favorite highlighters are these Sharpie liquid highlighters. They come in a package of 10 assorted colors, which I love because pretty much every other highlighter set has only 6 colors in it. So this one has several colors that you don't find in other highlighter sets. In addition to regular colors like yellow, green, orange, and pink, you have 2 different shades of blue, as well as unique colors like red, coral, indigo, and berry. These highlighters have a chisel point, so you can do wide or narrow highlights. It does have a very tight-fitting cap, which I like for highlighters, so they don't dry out so fast. The highlighter ink is very liquid, smooth, and pigmented, but you can still see black ink underneath it. I also find that it doesn't bleed onto the other side of paper like some highlighters do. As far as notebooks, I have 2 favorite notebooks. And the first one is this Erin Condren Take Note notebook. These come in 2 sizes. The larger one is 8.5 by 11 and the smaller one is 9 by 7 inches. The larger one has 204 pages and the smaller one has 124 pages. Both are college ruled. The larger one comes with a pocket and a clear Ziploc case that are attached in the back, as well as 2 pages of different colored label stickers. I love these notebooks because they're very sturdy. The covers are laminated and thick, and the spiral binding coil is oversized and heavy duty. In normal use, the binding and covers are not going to get bent and damaged. And because the covers are laminated, if you spill something on it or have to run outside in the rain, it's not going to get ruined, and it will protect the paper pages inside. Of course, aesthetics is really big for me, so I love that the front covers have pretty designs and the pages inside are decorated too. Most of the sheets are lined, but there are about 10 or 12 pages in the back that are blank, so you could invent your own format for those or use them for doodling or whatever you want. Now, I get my Erin Condren notebooks from Staples, the office supply store. They have a selection of Erin Condren products, and I pick them up when they're on sale. And it seems like Staples' website always has some of these notebooks on clearance. Anyway, they are great for everyday use. I usually take one to class with me because students will inevitably come up to me after class and tell me something or ask me a question that I need to follow up with. And I will never remember what they said unless I write it down. So I just use these notebooks to jot down notes to myself and plan out my classes and things like that. My other favorite notebook is this Cambridge Quick Notes Business Notebook by Mead. This is a great specialized notebook that I take to meetings with me. It is spiral bound and has a soft cover with a leather look. The surface is a little texturized like leather, but it's really just a thick coated paper. The dimensions are 9 by 11 inches, and you can also get it in smaller 5 by 8 inch size. Now, I have this pink breast cancer awareness version, which has been discontinued, but you can still get it in black, and it's the same thing. There are 80 sheets of paper, and the pages are very unique. At the top of each page, there is a little box for the date and a page number for if you have multiple pages of notes on something. Then the upper section of each page is lined and has a couple of columns for check marks or numbers if you wanted to make a list, as well as space for writing. The lower section of each page is colored and lined for notes. I find this to be really useful in meetings where you might use the upper section to take general notes, and then in the lower section I like to write a list of things that I need to do, things that I need to follow up with, or that I need to pay attention to. So I love the setup of these notebook pages and find it to be a very versatile and useful business notebook. And lastly, my favorite academic planner and calendar is this one from Staples. It is 8.5 by 11 inches and is for the academic year, including 14 months from July 2017 through August 2018. It is wire bound with a flexible plastic texturized cover. I love this appointment book column style with 1 week on 2 pages. Each weekday has 1 column with appointment times printed out in 15-minute intervals, which I find incredibly useful for planning out my days and scheduling appointments. The printed times run from 7 a.m. to 8:45 p.m. Monday through Friday. Then Saturday and Sunday are included in 1 column. Saturday has appointment times from 7 a.m. to 6:45 p.m. and Sunday just has a small box with lines in it. And that works fine for me. Sometimes I have something scheduled on a Saturday at a particular time, so I can include it in there. Sundays, I don't usually have a lot to put on my calendar, so this format does work really well for me. And at the beginning of each month, there is a monthly calendar inserted as well. My little tip for keeping track of what week you're on is to simply cut off the bottom corner of the week you're currently on. So when the book is closed, you can easily see where you currently are in the calendar and open right up to that page. So as you can see, I don't have a fancy, expensive calendar or anything elaborate for my planner. I don't do a lot of stickers or decorations or anything like that. I do use highlighters to color code my weeks, but that's about as fancy as I get with my calendar. So those are some of my school supply favorites. What are yours? And are you like me and love shopping at office supply stores? It would be awesome if you would share some of your favorite office supplies or school supplies, and you can do that in the comment section below. So I feel like I'm moving a little more toward being ready for fall semester to start, but I'm not quite there yet. I'm going to relish my last week of summer break. Okay, you guys, I'm going to show you some knitting. I finally finished the worsted weight socks. They are thick and squishy, but not super soft, but I love them and I'm looking forward to wearing them this winter. I'll probably just wear them around the house like slippers because they're pretty thick and too thick for wearing in shoes. But they're going to keep my feet nice and toasty, and I can tell they're also going to wear really well. You'll probably remember the yarn I used is 100% Cheviot wool from Jill Draper Make Stuff. It is the Valkill base, and this is the North Atlantic colorway. The Cheviot wool was really nice to work with. Like I said, it's not the softest yarn, and it might be a little too scratchy to wear around the neck, but it's great for socks. And then the pattern I used is the Easy Peasy Socks by Stacy Trock. It is a pattern for beginning sock knitters and uses worsted weight yarn instead of fingering weight like most sock patterns. And as you can see, they are shorty socks. And that, in addition to being made in worsted weight yarn, means that they knit up really fast, even for a slow knitter like me. And I knit these on a US size 5 or 3.75 millimeter double point needles, which is the size indicated in the pattern. So yeah, I'm happy with these socks and can recommend this pattern if you're a new sock knitter, because Stacy sets out every little step of sock making for you. Or if you're just looking for a worsted weight sock pattern, this is a good one. So again, that pattern is Easy Peasy Socks by Stacy Trock, and it's a free pattern on Ravelry. Well, come on into the classroom. Today we're talking about blocking your knitting. So let me start by defining what blocking means. Blocking is the process of moistening your finished object, shaping it into how you want it to look, and holding it in that position until it dries. For the most part, when you get knit fabric wet and reshape it, it kind of has the chance to settle into its new structure, and it will stay that way once it's dry. During blocking, the yarn fibers relax, stretch, and sometimes bloom or get plumper. So your finished object may take on an entirely new look after blocking. So, do you have to block everything? Well, no. Do you have to block some things? Well, no. You don't have to block anything if you don't want to. There are no rules. There are no knitting police. If you don't finish a project by blocking it, it's not the end of the world. But there may be times when you want to block something because some items look like wadded up hair nets when you get done knitting them. And blocking can turn that wadded up hair net into a gorgeous lacy shawl. So let's go over some reasons why you might want to block your knitting. Well, Margaret Redcliffe, in her book, The Knitting Answer Book, summarizes the purposes of blocking as follows. First, blocking reduces curling, straightens edges, and makes sewing seams easier. Second, blocking gets rid of slight variations in length or width between two pieces that should match. Third, blocking opens up fabric, like lace, to show off the design and patterning. Fourth, blocking smooths the surface of knitted fabric and makes the stitches more even. And fifth, blocking adjusts the shape of the finished object. So sometimes you want to block an item because it's going to look better than it will if you don't block it. Here are a few examples where you can see what I mean. This first one is not any fancy lace or anything like that. It's just plain stockinette stitch with some ribbing on the ends. In this picture, the item on the right is not blocked and the one on the left is. And you can see that blocking did a nice job of smoothing out the stitches and making the item lay flat. In this case, blocking worked kind of like ironing a wrinkled shirt. It smooths out the fabric and makes it look nicer. In the second picture, this is a scarf with a lacy pattern, and the one on the right is blocked and the one on the left is not. Again, you can see that blocking smoothed out the fabric and makes it lay flat and look nice. It also rectified the problem of curling on the edges. And probably the biggest difference is that blocking opened up the lace pattern so you can see the design better than before it was blocked. Before blocking, it was looking a little squished, and after blocking, it's looking open, smooth, and elegant. So here's another example of an open, lacy pattern. Before blocking is on the left, and after blocking is on the right. On this one, you can really see how blocking opened up the spaces in the lace, which allows you to see the design. After blocking, you can totally see the pattern, which has some sections of open lace interspersed with some sections of a tighter knit, and you really can't see that before blocking. This next example is a dramatic difference in blocking a shawl. The shawl before blocking is on the left, and after blocking is on the right. This is one of those cases where pre-blocking, the item looks a little gathered up. I mean, it's pretty, but you can see that the edges are all curling up. And after it's blocked, it's laying flat, the edges aren't curling up, and you can really see that pretty lace pattern a lot better. This last example is a garment, and it is unblocked on the left and blocked on the right. And I mean, it looks fine unblocked, but wow, what a difference blocking made. Again, it's like ironing a shirt. The fabric is laying smoothly and straight, where before blocking, it wasn't so polished looking. The blocking results in clean, straight lines and perfect shaping. So even though you don't have to block knitted items, oftentimes your finished object will really benefit from blocking, and it'll be a lot prettier after it's blocked. So that's something you might choose to do. Now, blocking an item involves three things. 1, something to put it on. 2, something to hold it in place. And 3, something to get it wet. So let's take a moment to talk about each of those three components individually. First, something to put your item on. A lot of knitting is blocked flat, so you will need some kind of flat surface for that. You can use your carpeted floor or a bed or your ironing board. Just put a big towel down and then lay the item to be blocked on top of that. Or you can buy blocking mats like these that I got from Knit Picks. These are interlocking foam rubber mats that are 12 inches square. They come in a set of 9 for around $20, and you can basically set them up in any shape you need. A square, a rectangle, and even a triangle for, I would say, a medium-sized shawl. If you want to block something really big on these, you're probably going to need 2 sets. You can buy other brands of these interlocking blocking mats that have grids on them for measuring out the dimensions you want your item to be. But you know what? You can get the exact same thing as these blocking mats if you buy a set of interlocking foam play mats for children. They are the exact same size, 12 inches squared and 3/4 inch thick, and you can get a set of 16 for $20. So this can really save you some money. The second component of blocking your knitting is that you need something to hold your item in place. The most common tool for holding items in place while blocking is the T-pin. And these are heavy-duty, rust-resistant steel pins that are 1.5 inches long. They're called T-pins because they look like the letter T. And you can get packages of 50 T-pins for around $3, so they're not that expensive. To block an item with T-pins, you just lay it out the way you want it shaped and pin it in that shape. Shawls with scalloped edging or picot edging are especially suited for using T-pins on the border because they'll really play up that edging. A similar product to the T-pins is the Knit Blockers by Knitter's Pride. These look like little combs where the teeth of the comb are actually blocking pins. Each box contains 2 different sizes of blockers, the 1.5 inch with 4 pins and the 3 inch with 8 pins. Now the top part is made out of plastic and the pins are made out of rust-resistant stainless steel. These are great for blocking anything, but especially for blocking straight items, although I've seen them used for scalloped edges as well. You just line these up along the edge of the knitted item being blocked, which will securely hold it in place, and it is so easy. Just be careful because the pins are very sharp and you don't want to poke yourself. When you're blocking lace or articles with long straight edges, it's hard to get the edges really straight using T-pins or even knit blockers. Oftentimes you'll get pin puckers or scallops between the pins because the item is stretched out and the pins only put tension on one small part of the knitted fabric. So a popular solution is to use blocking wires, and there are at least a couple of different kinds of blocking wires. This first kind is firm and fixed. This set I have comes from Knit Picks, and it came with 15 blocking wires and a box of 20 T-pins, all for $20. These are 35 inches long and they come in this sturdy cardboard tube. Now these wires are a little bit flexible, but they're generally pretty firm. And mainly they're used for straight edges like the top and the sides of a triangular shawl. Basically, you weave the blocking wire through the stitches along the edge of the shawl or whatever you're blocking. They do a wonderful job of keeping the edges straight and are held in place with either T-pins or knit blockers. Another kind of blocking wire is a flexible wire, and you can get these sets anywhere from $35 to $70 depending on the number of wires that come in the set and their sizes. Now my set has 7 blocking wires, 4 that are 35 inches long and 3 that are 70 inches long. Plus it included 30 T-pins. And it all comes in this little plastic pouch. These blocking wires are much finer, thinner, and flexible than the firm, straight ones that I just talked about. And these will bend into a multitude of curved shapes. These flexible blocking wires are useful for blocking things like pie shawls, which are completely circular, or half pie shawls, which are a semicircle. Again, you would lace the wire through the stitches on the circular side of the shawl and hold the wire taut with either T-pins or knit blockers. If your shawl has a flat side, like on a half pie shawl, you could use both the flexible wires for the curved side and the firm fixed wires for the straight side. Okay, so that covers how to hold your items while they're blocking on flat surfaces. But what about items you want to block that are not flat? I'm talking about things like socks or hats or mittens or even sweaters. Well, you can buy specialized blockers for these types of items. For hats, you can use one of these styrofoam heads. The nice thing about these is that you can stick pins into the styrofoam and block out a lace hat. And these heads cost like $5 at Sally Beauty. Alternatively, you can roll up a towel and block the hat on the end of a rolled up towel. And then you can still stick pins into that, plus it's free. Another hat blocking idea is to blow up a balloon and then insert that into the hat. Obviously, you won't be able to use blocking pins with a balloon though. For mittens and gloves, you can buy mitten blockers and glove blockers. And for socks, you've probably seen sock blockers like these. These are pretty popular and come in all different styles, including these metal ones from Bryspun, which are around $16 a pair. You can also get sock blockers that are made out of wood or acrylic, and there are some really pretty ones out there to choose from. Now, honestly, I probably wouldn't block hats, mittens, or socks unless they had some kind of a pattern that needed opening up. Or the other reason would be if they were slightly different sizes, like one sock was a little bigger than the other, blocking would probably even up their size. Now, another type of blocker is specifically made for sweaters and is called a woolly board. Now, before I talk about the woolly board, let me just say that a lot of people block their sweaters flat using T-pins or knit blockers. But some people do use the woolly board, which is a wooden frame specifically for blocking sweaters, and especially Shetland and Fair Isle sweaters. The woolly board stretches the body and the arms of the sweater into the right shape. My woolly board is a Laces brand, which runs a little over $100. It is freestanding, which makes it easier for the sweater to dry once it's on the board. Woolly boards are usually made out of wood and have a long, narrow piece for the shoulders and tops of the sleeves from cuff to cuff. It's fully adjustable in the waist, shoulders, neck, sleeves, and cuffs. Adjustments to the width of the body and sleeve length are made by turning a series of wooden knobs. The base of the arm can be adjusted by moving the lower arm piece to a different peg that holds it in place. Once the sweater is on the board, the sleeve tension can be adjusted using the screws on each side. The neck guide can also be adjusted to different widths. To put the sweater onto the woolly board, first insert the long top piece through one cuff opening all the way through the sleeve and then the other sleeve coming out the other cuff. This will make both sleeves reach horizontally outward. Then slip the sweater down over the two uprights and push the top piece down on top of the uprights. Push the underarm pieces into each cuff and slide the peg at the end into the appropriate holes in the uprights. Adjust the cuff tension by turning the knobs at the end of the lower arm piece. Finally, pull down on the bottom of the sweater and make sure it's straight and everything fits on the frame. Now, I have to say that I have not used this woolly board sweater blocker all that much. When I have used it, I haven't really been happy with the way it blocks, especially the sleeves. The biggest problem is that the ribbing at the wrist tends to be stretched out because the lower wooden pieces are basically resting on the sleeve, mainly the cuff, and the wood is kind of heavy. Yes, you can steam the ribbing and bring it back into shape, but I think it's kind of a pain in the neck to have to do that. I also thought that the instructions for assembling the woolly board were hard to follow. If it weren't for my husband and I both working on it together, I'm not sure if I would have figured it out all by myself. Because in every picture you see of the woolly board, it looks like the lower arm pieces are attached to the top piece with a screw, but they are not attached. So that really threw me off. Anyway, that's a quick overview of the woolly board, a frame for blocking sweaters. Then I also wanted to quickly mention another type of blocking frame, and that is a hap frame or hap stretcher, which is used for blocking items like big square Shetland lace shawls, which are called haps. But you can use these frames for other things as well. Anything square or rectangular or even triangular can be blocked on a hap frame. Hap frames are usually made of wood and have pegs or nails that line each side of the frame at like 1-inch increments. To mount a shawl or whatever you're blocking onto the frame, first adjust the frame to the size you want your finished shawl to be when it's done blocking. Next, using a tapestry needle, loosely thread cotton cord through the edge of the shawl all the way around it. Then, with the frame standing upright, hang the cord over the pegs or nails all the way around the frame and then pull it tight. This will stretch out the shawl and make the lace pattern really show up. Of course, you can make your own hap frame out of wood or PVC pipe. Now, I haven't seen these hap frames used a lot, probably because they're kind of big, cumbersome, and expensive. Buying one costs around $150, and most vendors selling them are in the UK. But if this is something you're interested in, it does do a really beautiful job of blocking square and rectangular shawls. All right, so I've talked about the first two components of blocking, something to put your item on and something to hold it in place. Next, you need something to get it moist. And there are three ways to do this, called wet blocking, steam blocking, and spray blocking. Okay, so first, wet blocking. Wet blocking involves soaking the item in tepid water until it's completely saturated. You can rinse the item in plain water or use some scented wool wash like Eucalan or Soak. Now, I usually use some scented wool wash just to infuse a nice fragrance in the item and then soak it for about 20 minutes. For soaking my knitted items, I use this big white tub that I reserve only for washing my hand knits. You can soak your items in the sink, but I just prefer to use this dedicated tub. This tub is a Cosiol Botticelli large wash tub, which you can get for $20. I know that Knit Picks also has a similar wash tub for around $20. So anyway, I just put some water and wool wash in this and then submerge the item I'm going to block. You just want to make sure your item is good and wet. After 20 minutes, take the item out of the water, gently squeeze the water out, lay it flat on a big bath towel, and roll the towel up with the item in it, pressing out as much water as possible. Your item should end up damp, but not dripping wet. And then you will pin it with T-pins or knit blockers, or else put it on some kind of blocking frame like sock blockers or a woolly board or a hap stretcher. When it dries, it will be all ready to go. Second, steam blocking. And steam blocking is where you use a steam iron or a steamer to get your item wet. You'll need to set the iron or steamer temperature to the appropriate setting for your fiber and then steam the item. If you're using an iron, be careful because you don't want to press the weight of the iron onto the fabric. You just want to use the steam feature, so be sure to hold the iron slightly above the fabric and just hold down the steam button. More than my steam iron, I like to use my Conair steamer that I got at Target for about $30. It has two heat settings, low and high, and this steamer also has a trigger with a built-in switch for constant steam, so you don't have to keep holding the trigger down, which is nice. Then you can just concentrate on steaming your item. Now, while you're steaming, arrange your item into the proper shape and then pin it to the blocking mat if you want, or you can just let it dry. Lastly, there is spray blocking, where you lay your item on a towel on a flat surface. Mist it with a spray bottle filled with tepid water. Again, arrange the item into its proper shape and pin it to a blocking mat if you want, and then allow it to dry. Okay, so the big question is, how do you know which blocking method to choose? Well, a lot of that depends on the fiber content of the yarn. The first thing you should do is check the yarn label to see if there are any blocking recommendations. But other than that, just know your fiber content. Most types of wool respond well to wet blocking. Steam blocking is often used on cotton and linen, although it would also work for most wools. Spray blocking is usually reserved for fine fibers which can tolerate moisture but not so much heat, like cashmere, alpaca, mohair, silk, although silk can handle careful steaming at a low heat setting. For synthetic yarns like acrylic, polyester, nylon, some people recommend against blocking these, but others have steam blocked them just fine. I would say if you want to block synthetic yarn, just be careful. Wet blocking or spray blocking probably won't work with synthetic yarn because synthetic yarn is basically plastic and it's not going to absorb the water. Steaming will probably be your best bet, but you have to be very careful. Do the steaming on a low heat setting because too much heat will melt the yarn, which will obviously ruin it. So blocking synthetics requires some care and attention so you don't ruin the yarn. Now, what about blends? Yarns that are made of different types of fibers together, like a wool silk blend. Well, in that case, it's recommended that you use the blocking method preferred for the most delicate fiber in the blend. For instance, in a wool silk blend, you would want to go with steaming at a low heat or spray blocking because of the more delicate silk fiber. And keep in mind that everything doesn't need to be blocked, so maybe you don't need to worry about blocking some items at all. One last question is, will I have to block an item every time I wash it? And the answer is probably not, especially with wool. The most dramatic change takes place the first time the yarn gets wet in its new shape. Unless something extreme happens to it, it will stay more or less how you blocked it. Lace may need to be reblocked just to maintain its crispness, but it's not going to turn back into the blob that looked like a hairnet that it originally was before you blocked it the first time. For most items, you can just smooth them out with your hands and let them dry flat, or drape them over a drying rack. So, what have we learned about blocking today? Well, blocking is a handy technique used for stretching and smoothing out stitches in a finished piece of hand knitting. Whether you're preparing to sew pieces of a sweater together or simply finishing a shawl or a scarf, blocking can create a beautiful, even fabric, making it easier to work with and lovely to wear. You can block most types of fiber as long as you're gentle. The goal is to get the item into its desired shape without damaging the fibers. And although everything doesn't have to be blocked, blocking can be magical. It can reveal hidden stitch patterns and really change the look of a fabric. Oh, and measuring gauge is also easier on a blocked square compared to one that is messy and has curled up edges. So I hope you are inspired to explore different blocking techniques and improve the look and fit of your knitted garments and accessories. Well, that brings us to the end of today's show. So what are your experiences with blocking your knitting? Or maybe crochet, because I know that crocheted items can be blocked as well. Have you ever blocked anything? What method did you use? How did it turn out? Hopefully you don't have any blocking disaster stories to share with me, but whether your experiences are good or bad, I would love to hear from you in the comment section below. If you have any questions about today's show, don't hesitate to ask. And I'd love to hear any topic ideas that you have for future episodes, or if you'd like to see a product tested. Just leave your suggestions and questions in the comment section below. I always enjoy reading what you have to say. And lastly, in case I didn't mention it earlier, I'll put links to everything I talked about in this video in the description box below. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today, and I'll see you in the next video. In next week's video, I think I'm going to talk about some research about knitting as a positive addiction. A lot of us obsessive knitters joke around about being addicted to knitting, but are we really? Is knitting really an addiction? And maybe is there such thing as a positive addiction? So I hope you'll come back and join me for that interesting discussion. And in the meantime, stay smart and have a sparkly week.